that okay? I'm going to assume yes. I know
Yes, I
you're
can see
all
it. Yep.
fantastic. All right, so I am Jennie Skancke, and I am the Wetlands Program Consultant at DNR, and used to be on the WPA board, still a WPA member. And so I'm just going to kick things off here because Jim and Lisa, my coworkers here at the EWR division at the DNR, were asking me how this audience would like to receive this information, what would be the most valuable information for you all. So I'm just going to share. Um, let's see here. There we go. Everything's working. So I'm just going to share our objectives, what we believe our objectives to be today. Will be to improve everyone's awareness of the DNR's Natural Heritage Review Program and processes, especially the Conservation Explorer, which launched, I'm not sure how long ago, but a little while, but it's still new to a lot of people. It's an incredibly valuable resource for early review for projects. And I'm going to dig in a little bit deeper on rare natural communities, which if you are an LGU or in any way tied to WACA, you should at least be aware that rare natural communities are within WACA rule and statute. But I want to talk a little bit more about what does it all mean for people who are acting as LGU? What does it mean for us at the DNR, et cetera? And overall, hopefully we are conveying that early coordination with the DNR and any sort of special resources is really highly encouraged. We hope that you have some contacts that you can feel free to reach out to, that you know the tools that you can all use, et cetera, et cetera. So how does this tie into WACA? As you all likely know, there are special considerations in WACA rule under 8420.0515, and that includes rare species, rare natural communities, and all of these other things that are these subparts to 0515. Today, we're just going to focus on essentially what parts of these things does the Natural Heritage Review look at? What kinds of things can come up when somebody requests a Natural Heritage Review? How can people undertake Natural Heritage Review on their own? And then, like I said, I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit more in depth about rare natural communities, because if it ever does end up on your plate, it can be a bit of a heavy lift for all people involved. So I'll spend a little time on that. And I'm ready for passing this over to Jim. So this will just take Kelsey a second so she can remake Jim as a presenter.
Okay, Jim, I've made you a presenter. Let me know if that works for you.
Sounds like it did. Right, let me share. I didn't do before. Hit the actual share button. Okay. So today, I guess I'll start. My name is Jim Drake, or James Drake. I go by both. You'll see James in my email with the DNR. I'm a Natural Heritage Review Specialist here. With me is Lisa Joyal. She's not going to be presenting, but here for any conversation, discussion, or questions. She is the Natural Heritage Review Program Consultant. So as Jennie said, I'm going to cover a bit on Minnesota Conservation Explorer and Natural Heritage Review. So Minnesota Conservation Explorer is it's a website, or you access it through a website. It's the way that we prefer to make natural heritage data available. Sorry, I'm moving a few things around so that they're not blocking my text here. You're going to hear me say MCE a lot. That's obviously just Minnesota Conservation Explorer, or NHIS. Many or some of you may know what that means, but that's Natural Heritage Information System. And that's a collection of data layers that provides information on Minnesota's rare plants, animals, native plant communities, and other rare features. So I'll get some of the acronyms out of the way. Minnesota Conservation Explorer has three main functions. One is conservation planning, and that is allows all users to have access to the public NHIS data. We'll go through a lot of this in the later part of the presentation. That part is free, so you don't even need to log in. You can just go to the website and start looking at the data. There's a non-public data access function. This is only available to trained internal staff and external licensees, and there's a process to get a license and trained that I'm not really going to go into, but that is certainly a function of MCE. And then there's Natural Heritage Review, the other main function that I'll touch on today. You have to be registered, so you have to have a login and account with us. But then you can request a Natural Heritage Review, and within less than 10 minutes, you'll receive a response. The response may be that further review is necessary, but you'll get some kind of notification of where your review stands. And about 60% of the requests that come to us do need further review by the staff. But again, that means so 40% you're getting a response within 10 minutes, telling you what may be recommended for your project. All right, so MCE. It's got this web map function. Displays NHIS data layers. It's again available to everybody. You don't need to have a GIS license, an ARC or QGIS or whatever. This has some kind of basic but pretty important GIS functions in it. The layers are updated quarterly, so you shouldn't ever get data that's too far out of date. I'm going to try to switch. Worked nice. So I've got this all backed up on the PDF, or the PowerPoint, but we'll try to do this live. Let me know if any of this isn't working or is too slow for any of you. This is MCE Live. I just didn't log in, sorry. I just opened up the page. You can see up here, I could log in, but I'm not going to. So anybody could do this. You can start seeing some of the data layers available over here. The grayed out ones, they're scale dependent for if they're visible or not. So if we zoom in, they'll become more visible. And we'll go through a lot of these, or several of them at least in a few minutes here. The couple things to point out before we get into those. Oh, all right, I can't do that. Before we get into the actual data layers, you can see up here on the left, they're grouped by the Natural Heritage Review data layers. There's conservation planning, sort of more general functions, and then several reference layers. If you ever get into this also, it's good to know there's a pretty powerful search feature. You can open that, you can type in any kind of address, a county, a city, and it will take you there. As well as, again, measuring if you want to do area or distance measurements. I won't go into, there's some more features that I'm not going to go into because they take a lot more, but you can also do some simple search features or search functions that let you look for anything in these data layers, a certain species if you have the ability to see rare species. So again, there are some pretty good basic GIS functions available. So let's get into some data layers here. So I've reordered, any of you who are keen-eyed enough, I've reordered these just so that the ones I'm looking at are up at the top. But you can just start turning on layers here. And let's zoom in a little bit. We're a little west of Sartell here. Let's say we were looking at this area for some reason, there's some project that you're interested in or something in this area. You can turn on data layers and start trying to figure out what's there. So I have DNR management units, so state land. I can click on it And up comes some basic information, the name. This is an SNA, the area of it. You can click on here and it takes you to the website of the SNA if you want to dive in more for any reason. If you zoom out, you can see other, or go to another area, you can also see, you know, this is a WMA you can click on. So any state management unit, you can dive in and see what's there, see anything if it has a web page. We can turn on, let's turn on wetlands and public waters. I'll turn off the state land. So it gets a little messy, as you might expect, but this is all the NWI wetlands and all the public waters we have. Especially when it starts getting messy like this, you might want to use, there's a legend feature here. So you can start looking, okay, the colors, the purple there is a bog, or we got this green shade up here, the wooded swamp. Again, if I clicked on any of these, I would get whatever information is available for that polygon. In this case, it's not that much, but it gives you a bit here. Besides these watery features, we can look at what kind of native plant communities are nearby. This is, right now, this is just displaying green is rare, so S1 through S3 for our ranking, and that may come into play for RNCs. Gray is those that are S4 or S5, so not rare. Again, you can, most of these have a caret over here. You can display some different options if you want. We have conservation status rank. If you want to show system, you can do that. These are classified by, you know, their native plant community system. So again, there's a lot of, once you turn the data on, you can often find a different view or a different way to classify things. MBS sites. So again, if we're looking at this area here, there's a lot of stuff going on right over here. That's where that SNA is. So it's not surprising. There's a lot of natural features. The purple color here is an outstanding and the blue is a high MBS site. Again, if I click on it, it gives me a name. These don't have their own web page, so you're not going to get a hyperlink anywhere. But it does tell you a little bit about it, the name and the rank it has. Let's see, we move down through these. So something that again might be of interest to this group or relevant to our talks today, we can turn on calcareous fens. All the listed calcareous fens are here. If I zoom out, you can see a bunch, you know, Agassiz Beach Ridges, Western Minnesota, that kind of thing. But we're pretending that we're just limited to down here. So there is a fen nearby that we may want to be aware of in whatever is going on in this project area over here. And as you're working through these, if you aren't really sure of what the layers are, they've got a layer description where it gives you some basic information. This takes you to, can give you some more metadata if you really want to dig into stuff. But there's usually a little more information. Ooh, clicked on the wrong one. That's under the little 3 dots here if you want to dig in deeper or have forgotten what a layer is or something about it. And then the last one is WACA Rare Natural Communities. This is a somewhat recent layer that's been added to MCE. Again, you see these are probably defined by those rare natural communities or wetlands within that outstanding or high MBS sites. You can again click on them. That tells you what native plant community they are. They're all one color here, and you might be wondering, what does that mean? What kind of RNC is it? Again, we can open up, whoops, sorry, up here and open up the legend and see that, so these are all potential. So they have not been listed, designated, nominated, anything. Those will be, if you were, let's say down here along the Minnesota. Then if you're working this area, you'd see one, and you'd see an actual candidate RNC, it looks like there. So all of this information here is, again, it's public data. I'm not logged in. I don't have any account or anything. But if I was thinking about some work up in this area, I could have sorted through here and seen all of these different public NHIS layers, how they might relate to the project I'm thinking of. You can, there's a bunch more that I won't go into, but you can, explore this at your own leisure, the townships, roads, some of these reference layers. If you want, especially if you're looking at, when it's closer in, I find it too busy to look at from a higher altitude, so to speak. You can have, you would like to have. I like the topographic. Is my audio coming through okay?
It was a little spotty for a moment there, but for the most part, it's coming through okay for me.
Okay, good. Good. So yeah, I got a message here that the audio is a little shaky. So hopefully that works out. I'm hardwired to our system, so I'm hoping this will resolve itself. Okay, so that's a quick summary of maybe the more relevant NHIS layers for I think what we're talking about today. I'm going to go back to presentation. And skip ahead. These were in case we had technical issues. Okay. So you can go through all those layers individually, or put them all on top of each other if you want. But you can also do what we call a conservation planning report, which will collect all of those publicly available data layers and put that information into a PDF for you. So within MCE, you can define an area of interest. It's as simple as drawing a box. Up here in the left corner, there was an option. You can also upload a zip shapefile. Soon you should be able to add these areas of interest using KMZs. Not available now, but it should be coming up. And once you have added your area of interest, you just give it a name and hit go. Information around that area of interest you defined by data layer. You will get relevant hyperlinks if you want to dig more into what an MBS site is, or what an outstanding one means, what this native plant community is, or what defines it. This is an easy way to screen for public NHIS data in the vicinity. It's free. Again, you don't need to log in or anything. It's just go to the website, the MC website. Do keep in mind, this is not a natural heritage review, and it does not address state listed species. So that's a separate thing that I'll touch on in a little bit, but this is not going to cover that. All right, a conservation planning report. I've got an example here. So I just did an area north of Mankato. You'll get this several page PDF. All those layers that we were talking about a minute ago, the MBS sites of biodiversity significance, NPCs, CalCFENs, they're all going to be in here. And it will tell you within a given search distance, and that's fixed. So this is always going to be 330 feet for an MBS site. Are there any? What are they? The site name, the significance, the status. Some are preliminary, but most in the state, the vast majority are final. And then again, if you get this report and you're thinking, what was that? I can't remember what this is. You can click on these links and they'll take you to define all of the stuff you've got going on here. So with these links, you can do a lot of rabbit holes you can go down. Two others that I'll just talk about for a minute are the native plant communities. Again, within 330 feet, 100 meters basically. It will search, it will give you a list of all of the NPCs that are there. If they're in an MBS site, it will give you the name. So we had this line 30 up here, it's an MBS site. It's got 2 types of native plant communities in it. The code, if you want to, look in a database or something. The name, conservation rank, and then number of communities or number of polygons, really. Again, we've got hyperlinks here. So if you want to look at a CalcFen, what that is, it will take you to the DNR's description of that. And, these are pretty detailed, things you can dig into, but if you want to, they're there for you. And then finally, there's the calcareous fens that I'm just gonna look at. This search distance is 5 miles because, of course, we're more interested in is hydrology affected that might affect the fen or something. So it's not just that 330 feet, but it lists there are 2 calc fens within 5 miles. You've got a name and an ID, and then a TRS location here. Although again, you can just look them up within MCE and they'll be displayed. And then several other layers I won't dig into, but then you also get a map. So this is the area I was looking at. So that is a conservation planning report. There wasn't a whole lot going on in that area. You could get, for a larger area, you might get, several MBS sites and also several NPCs. Okay, so that was function 1 that I mentioned for MCE. It can do conservation planning through a report or through your own, just poking around and looking at things. I skipped over, or just I didn't go into any detail about rare species because we're not all authorized to see them on this. So I can't show you where the rare species or what they look like, the rare species layers. But of course, that's something that a lot of people might be interested in, and you can get a license through the DNR to view the rare species if that's something that you're interested in. But the third function that I brought up about MCE is the natural heritage reviews. So this is similar to a conservation planning report, and I'm not sure some or many of you may have done these, but as a reminder, or if you haven't, they do kind of a similar process. It takes an area, looks around it, and gives you back some information. But the big difference is it considers non-public information. So you're going to get those state listed species. You need to have an account in MCE. You need to register so you can input your information, and also so you can then go back and get your data later. There is a fee with this. That's one part of you registering, is we need to know where to bill you, basically. Why do a natural heritage review? So there are a few reasons. One big one is it's early coordination. So you can identify potential issues early in the project planning and not have a big surprise come with 6 months to go or something. It's a natural heritage review is also due diligence to comply with state endangered species law. And the outcomes of it will tell you how to comply with the state endangered species law. So avoidance measures you can do, that kind of thing. You will get a heads up regarding some potential issues with federal endangered species law. This does not replace a formal or official federal review, an IPAC, or however you're going to do it. But this will help bring a heads up if there's bumblebee habitat nearby or some other species. And then finally, it will give you a heads up about potential WACA concerns concerning calcareous fens or RNCs. So just going to go over how to do one, just so if you ever are interested or thinking about doing one, you'll have some idea of what's involved. Again, it's starts pretty similar to a conservation planning report. It starts the exact same actually, because from this stage you could upload your area of interest and click on either button. In this case, we're going to choose Natural Heritage Review. Again, just a reminder that there is a fee involved. It's $120 when you submit, and then if it's a manual review, it may be more. It may not, but it may. And then there'll be more information involved. So because there's a review of your project and how it might affect threatened or endangered species, we need to get some more information from you. So I'm not going to go through all these fields, but just to quickly show the kind of information we need. This is fairly sparse, the last two text fields. We who do these reviews would prefer more information than we have here in our example. But we'll take whatever we get and do the review with that. And then the final one I want to point out here, two important things here are at the bottom, that project submission. Initially, it will be draft. Your project is not submitted until you hit final and then submit. So if you just hit draft and submit, it stays in a draft folder, basically. It's something, if you're not quite sure the project is going, you want to get it ready to be submitted, but you're still, waiting, you don't want to formally kick off, you can keep it in draft form. But you have to make sure you do hit that final submission to get it into the review queue. And then also the little button, the checkbox at the bottom, that you're affirming the information is complete and accurate. If information changes, the Natural Heritage Review might change. So we want to kind of make sure that you're sure this is what's going to happen in your project. This is what your My Projects page will look like. If you submit any projects in here, you'll have a list. So you could go back a month, 3 months later and see the results of a project that you submitted earlier. These again are all draft, just because we didn't want to clog up our formal queue, but yours would probably mostly say final. And any of those you can click on and see that information we just looked at to enter. You can see the results of the review in there. Basically anything about the project in MCE, you'll be able to see through these project links. And then what happens once you hit that Natural Heritage Review? You get one of 3 automated responses, again, within 10 minutes, maybe 5 minutes. One is no comments. Another option is you'll get comments, a standard comments, we call it also. And the third option is needs further review or manual review. The no comments is pretty much what it says. There were no rare features within the standard search radius that will be affected by your project. So basically you've done your Natural Heritage Review and nothing was flagged. Standard comments, you'll get that if there are things like MBS sites or basically non-regulated or sorry, non-threatened or endangered species. There are a few other sort of minor cases that will make this go to manual review, but mostly this is if you don't have threatened or endangered species nearby. And then you get recommendations for how to minimize impacts to these identified features. And in this case, you can see there's in that table, sort of in the center there, there's an MBS site that was flagged as being nearby. And so you'll get a few paragraphs describing MBS sites and then some best practices to minimize any potential impacts. And then if you get the final option, again, is that manual review required. That's usually, again, going to be triggered by state listed endangered or threatened species, although there are other things that will also trigger it. If you get that, then that project is routed to me or my coworker Molly. So we're going to look at it and review the project details and do the review from there. The manual review may result in the need for avoidance measures. or the collection of additional information. This is, you can think of these 4 points here as sort of a the way we approach things, or it's not quite a workflow, but sort of step 1, 2, 3, 4, and the process may stop at any point. But the first thing is look for avoidance measures needed or additional information. If avoidance of suitable habitat or for certain species, avoidance in certain seasons is not feasible, then a survey may be needed. If a survey is done and it detects state threatened or endangered species, an avoidance plan may be needed. And then finally, if avoidance of take is not feasible, then the proposer will need to apply for a permit to take. So again, this is sort of our thought process, but it can stop at any point if, say, avoidance of suitable habitat is achieved. That's great. The rare species survey process. So if a rare species survey is necessary, then we've got a web page that has a lot of information to get people started. There are the rare species survey process that is outlined. There's a list of DNR certified species surveyors, rare species surveyors. There's guidance for survey process on plants and mussels. And then there's further guidance on how to structure or what needs to be in a plan, the report, and then how to submit the reports and data. So everything will flow as smoothly as possible. You can always reach out to us with questions, but this is a good place to go to get the first, bunch of information should get you going pretty well. And then at the bottom there is that link for that or address for that website. If avoidance of state listed or endangered or state listed endangered or threatened species is not feasible, then a permit to take can be applied for. That's they've got their own website with a bunch of information, but basically you complete the permit application and submit that to the DNR, and then you'll be notified when that's received. The permit application will be reviewed, possibly need more information. Then the DNR will need to approve the permit to take, and once the permit is reviewed, application is reviewed, a permit will be issued or denied within 150 days. So that's their process. And again, if you want more information or get the permit application itself, that's all available on their website there. So in summary, again, natural heritage review should happen as early in the project planning process as possible to avoid any last minute reactions or trying to juggle things. MCE can facilitate that process plan or project planning and also compliance with state law through the conservation planning report and the access to the public NHIS data. If you have a license, also the access to the non-public NHIS data. And then finally, submitting a request for a natural heritage review. Natural heritage reviews result in one of 3 outcomes we just went over a few slides ago, but there's going to be no comments or standard comments, which will get you your letter essentially in less than 10 minutes, or a manual review will be required, and then that will take a longer process. If you do have to go to manual review, may result in further actions to demonstrate avoidance of the rare features, either seasonal or habitat avoidance or rare species surveys, or possibly an avoidance plan. And then finally, if an avoidance plan is not, or if avoidance is not feasible, a permit to take may be necessary. And that's got its own separate step as we just went through. And then the Natural Heritage Review workflow versus the Wetland Conservation Act review workflow, they're separate. As I touched on a couple times, we'll give you a heads up about WACA issues, but that review is not part of the Natural Heritage Review workflow. But it is a first step to kind of get those kind of things, those kind of issues brought up. And now we'll turn back to Jennie for the WACA process.
Thank you, Jim. I will change presentation to Jennie, and no questions in the comment section right now, so we'll move that over.
All right, we're back. Not too much trouble. You guys can hear me okay, Kelsey?
Yep, can hear you just fine.
And you can see my screen.
I don't see the screen shared.
Shoot, okay. I think I did what Jim did, which is like, you have to be sure you click the button share. So I think I'm good now.
Yep, see it now.
Okay, great. All right, so I am just going to dive a bit further into the rare natural communities part of things in the WACA statute and rule, because this is something that is in the current rulemaking effort that Bowser and DNR have been working on, of course, with Bowser taking like 99% of the load there. But DNR does have a pretty significant role in a couple parts of WACA rule and statute, which can be a little unusual and can take a fair amount of coordination between Bowser and the LGUs and the DNR, and some of these things can be a little confusing. So there is an April 25th draft, I believe, still up on the Bowser webpage. They're working on the next round of drafts. And the current draft up there does have some changes to the rare natural communities part of rule. And that is likely to change a little bit again. I'm just going to present it as it exists right now in rule and statute. So we know that there's not very much language in either statute or rule about rare natural communities, almost zero direction on what this all means for projects and for WACA and for where it should fall in the whole process of things. I think maybe like the smallest amount of rule and statute for the biggest amount of pages of a guidance document. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the guidance document and what it all means. So the rule says that a replacement plan that involves modification of a rare natural community as determined by the DNR's Natural Heritage Program must be denied if the LGU determines that the proposed activities will permanently adversely affect the natural community. So this little teeny tiny part is what directs the DNR to designate rare natural communities, because there's no definition. You know, it's just, this is what it is. It's in the guidance, so we'll get there. And then under statute, a little bit more guidance to the LGU on knowing that if you get a rare natural community within a project and there is a replacement plan and the rare natural community might be adversely affected, then there is this opportunity to consider measures to mitigate any adverse effect on the community. So I'm not going to get very far on that part of things because it's so very project specific, and these are really very rare. We've only done this really less than 5 times, I think, across the state where we've had to get to this measures of mitigation. So I'm not going to cover that today, but I am always available for questions. So that guidance document, it has these, sorry, I think that I'm a little tiny bit out of order. So here's the guidance document. It exists on the Bowser webpage as a PDF, and it's about 8 pages long. This is what it looks like, and you can find it there. And it just recaps the rule and statute, but then it has 7 more pages of what should DNR consider when designating a rare natural community, and a little bit of what should the LGU consider when there is the need for some sort of mitigation. All right, I'm going to go back up because this is just me summarizing down from those 8 pages into the 5 criteria that we consider when we're looking at a potential rare natural community. So we do not want this to be a mystery. It is in the document, but what we have heard during the rulemaking is that some people feel that the guidance document is sort of gray enough that potentially a rare natural community could be almost anywhere in the state. And how do project proposers know, and how do LGUs know, so that folks don't go about proposing projects in areas that are like no-goes. So that's what I'm going to talk a little bit more about today. And these are the 5 criteria we use. And really, our use of these criteria, our use of the rare natural community designation has been very, very small, because our leadership does not have any intention to push the limits of these guidance. So far, whenever we've designated a rare natural community, it has met all 5 of these criteria and been a high conservation rank, a high condition rank, etc. But the guidance document, it is pretty gray, and it does essentially leave the door open for the DNR to weigh some of these factors more than others. So I've narrowed it down here, but the guidance document does talk about, potentially there could be a native plant community that has a lower S rank, but it's very, very rare at the local scale, like perhaps within one county, and then maybe this native plant community exists also in one other county or something like that. There are definitely details that go into each of these 5 criteria. So why do we want to get a jump on these rare natural communities? Like Jim said, this sort of early coordination can help to not end up with a big delay, because rare natural communities, we have found, almost always require extra surveys on the landscape when we think there might be a rare natural community. And so to do an NHIS review and get warned about that, it allows, I think, project proposers to say, we're sending somebody out there in the field to do a delineation. We're taking the TEP out there to do a delineation concurrence. What else do we need to look at? And we do feel that the onus is upon the project proposer. We have data sheets that we give to people when we want them to collect that extra data. It might be classifying the native plant communities on site, determining whether there are native plant communities or whether the entire site has been disrupted enough that there's not native plant communities, etc. So if somebody submits for an NHIS review, this is the language down here that they get, and it says, if the proposed project includes a wetland replacement plan under WACA, please contact your DNR regional ecologist. So it's a little bit putting the cart in front of the horse when we ask for more data to be collected if there's not a replacement plan. But if a project proposer believes that there is going to be a replacement plan, then it's really in everyone's best interest to talk about what additional data is going to be needed. Because if that replacement plan's coming in, say, late September or October, but it turns out we need more surveys on site, it's going to be not until the next field season that that can happen. So if we talk about this when we're reviewing a delineation, oftentimes there can still be time to collect that data in the same field season. So that's why we say, do an NHIS review to get a heads up for this. We will do a further review on our desktops or with our local knowledge. And then just because somebody gets this warning in their NHIS letter does not at all mean that there's going to be more data collection or that there's really for sure going to be a rare natural community there. But it's nice to know early. So this can happen by a project applicant. It can happen, say, we had a rare natural community occur in an area where a watershed was proposing a project, and they had identified multiple sites where they wanted to do work. And I don't know, somehow, you know, they maybe hadn't looked at the potential for rare natural communities in the areas they were proposing for projects, et cetera. So I'm going to show you some of the data layers that can be considered. And Jim also showed that you can use the Conservation Explorer for looking at these data layers. And in that way, planning documents can also call out areas that have high potential for having rare natural communities. I think that's a fantastic way to go. Proposers and the DNR really do not want to come down to like having a 60% engineering plan or something. And then we say, but there's a rare natural community here. Can you show us an alternative that avoids it? And sometimes there's no alternative, and that essentially makes it just a no-go when there's not any sort of adequate mitigation that's available. So first, I just want to start. I know a lot of you use ArcMap. I know some people don't, but the same layers that are available that Jim showed in the Conservation Explorer are also available through our geospatial commons. And we've created this rare natural communities layer that is just a query of other layers that we use to examine the potential for a rare natural community to be on the landscape. So we've overlaid our native plant communities that have high S ranks, areas of MBS biodiversity significance, et cetera. And so the layer has the metadata in there to explain what the heck do these do these titles mean of these layers. So there's potential rare natural communities. That is really just like nobody has actually looked at all the data components for this area and said, yeah, I think this could be a rare natural community. That is when just there's these overlaying layers. There's a high S rank native plant community or something like that. And so it's like saying, heads up, there are these, I clicked here on one of these potential rare natural communities, and it pulled up this native plant community that had a high S rank. And so it won't be a total mystery, like why is something a potential rare natural community? The designated ones are when we've actually had the commissioner designate a specific area. That's primarily the rock outcrops that are mostly in Southwest Minnesota have been designated. A couple other areas. This came about when the big polymet project was getting proposed. Candidate ones are ones that we have examined. Maybe the project ended up not going forward, or maybe they were not even going to have a replacement plan. So we decided not to send that all the way up to the commissioner's office for designation. Nominated is similar actually sadly don't quite know the difference between candidate and nominated. They're basically the same thing where we said, oh yeah, this is a native plant community that's in good condition, but we didn't go all the way through designation. So if there's any one of those top ones, that is a really good indication that native plant communities nearby that are similar would also be very good candidates. The potential one, a lot less worry. A lot of those areas we find it might be some upland, high S rank community, which we at the DNR still care about, but the replacement plan is not going to impact that plant community, so we're not going to designate that. And then I just wanted to show, here's where those data sets are. You can go into the geospatial commons and you can get that rare natural communities layer. You can get our layers of high biodiversity significance. And then also, hopefully you all are familiar with the wetland finder. I think I may have presented previously about this tool, but we've added the rare natural communities into there. So that overlays with the NWI. And then I don't have this live right now, but you can light up the NWI with a different wetland type classification types. So you can do the coordinate, or you can do circular 39, etc. And same sort of thing. You can click on here and it'll show you the layers that overlap. And then this also has the public waters. We want to try to keep this wetland finder pretty simple. You can turn off these as well. We don't want it to get too busy. So we're not going to add any other things. Like, it does seem like it might be even better to just view, if you're going to use an online tool, it does kind of seem like the Conservation Explorer might be better because you can turn on and off multiple layers, whereas here you've got just wetlands, rare natural communities, and public waters. But it's a good tool. I especially share this with just individual landowners or realtors who call me and say, somebody said there's a wetland on my property, and I give them this tool and they use the search bar and they go and look, and I give them the spiel about that, if they think they might impact a wetland, or if they need a setback or something, then they need a delineation. So it plays that role pretty well, I think. This is just showing, again, like if you're not gonna use that rare natural community layer, but you're gonna use the layers that we took and created a query to combine them. You can see the native plant communities separately. You can see the MBS sites of high biodiversity significance. So here on this map, here are some areas that have high S ranks. And so if you maybe had a project area here, and those wetlands were possibly the same wetland type as over here, we might say, we want you to go out and tell us what native plant community that is, using our native plant community guidelines. So that does really require a specialized botanist to go out there and be able to identify the plants that exist in which native plant community those might qualify as. Same sort of thing here. I'm just showing an example where, let's say a project proposer wants to do a project here. Our native plant communities map is not by any means comprehensive across the state. It primarily includes really high quality lands, state-owned lands, sometimes federal-owned lands, and same thing with the MBS layers. So it's fairly common that there might be an area that hasn't been impacted, especially if it has like a seepage meadow or something like that, where a farmer hasn't been able to plow through, or for whatever reason, it has remained intact. Our ecologist probably just didn't map it yet because it's a private site. We haven't gone out and accessed all of these private sites, and we haven't done aerial interpretation across the state. So if something's nearby and it's the same sort of potentially native plant community or wetland type, we probably will require that somebody go out there and classify the native plant community, do a condition rank. And like I said, we have data sheets for that. By that point, the LGU and the DNR and the project proposer are exchanging a bunch of messages. And we're talking about the potential for these areas, et cetera. And this is more common in some areas where there's, development has taken place, especially in the metro area, where some of the rarest communities still exist. And now they're getting proposals for development. So sometimes this seems to be happening really frequently in certain counties that will remain unnamed. And then in other counties, it's not occurring at all because, development's not happening very frequently in a lot of Minnesota's counties. But we are seeing a few wind and solar proposals where there's a humongous project area. And of course, it's going to trigger a lot of things through our NHIS review. And so in cases like that, if you are handling a big project like that and you get that ping, it's good to have a conversation about like which areas might actually require further survey or which areas might be best off if there could be avoidance. Because it would be real stinky to have a replacement plan for a huge project and the replacement plan has to get denied because there's one rare natural community impact by a wind turbine or something like that. So this is just saying the same thing. Please coordinate early. The surveys need to occur during the growing season, and it's real awful to end up in the next growing season and project proposers get really upset about that. So like I was saying earlier, we both have roles, right? The DNR has roles, the LGU has roles, and the LGU role is to determine whether that replacement plan needs to be denied. And that can be a really uncomfortable role for LGUs, and we understand that. It says this language about if the LGU determines that the activities will permanently adversely affect the natural community. So a rare natural community can be a non-wetland. Oftentimes we find that a wetland native plant community is larger than a delineated wetland. And the rare natural community will be that native plant community, not the actual wetland that's been delineated. So if the replacement plan has activities within it that are going to have impacts on that rare natural community, then the LGU must deny the project proposal. Or, there's different ways forward. The Bowser Wetland Specialist can help with this as well, and it's up to LGUs. There can be an extension of the application, or maybe they withdraw their application and they come forward with an alternative or something like that. So we have had LGUs ask us to weigh in on whether we think that the proposed activities are going to permanently adversely affect that natural community. And we are able to offer our opinion, but we absolutely are not able to make that decision. So we will not overstep our authority on that part of things. And that can be pretty hard for LGUs, and I'm sorry about that. So the LGUs can you know, potentially prevent delays when it comes to that replacement plan application by encouraging folks to submit to the Conservation Explorer or do their own reviews early on and coordinate with us. And then, you know, heaven forbid if we have a rare natural community, and it does come down to looking at whether there is a permanent adverse effect. And then we talk about, well, what kinds of mitigation options are there? And for the most part, these are oftentimes pretty big mitigation options. So like, there's still going to have to be some level of avoidance to the greatest extent possible. There's probably going to have to be some level of permanent preservation of the largest portion of that community, because these rare natural communities are rare. So there's not very many opportunities to do actual like habitat improvement someplace, or like, you know, it's not like wetland banking. It's like they're so rare, there's not very many places where they can be restored or anything like that. So we oftentimes say, well, we don't really think that mitigation is adequate. It's got to be permanent preservation or avoidance. And we definitely have seen a few projects not be able to go forward because they couldn't come up with a mitigation option or avoidance. And let's see, so this is oftentimes a discussion that the project proposer, the LGU, and the DNR all have together in communication. And like I said, these are rare. There's a handful per year, less than a handful maybe. And so we'll talk about it if it ever comes up for any of you. I did not realize these were all this sort of progressive slides. So that's all I have. We can open it up for some questions. Thanks, everyone. Feel free to contact me if you have questions about rare natural communities or about calcareous fens when they come into play. That could be a whole separate discussion that maybe I've already presented about. I'm going to present this again at Bowser Academy in October. So if you don't want to hear this whole thing over again, you might want to choose a different session. All right, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. We do have one question in the chat, and then if Jim or Lisa want to jump in on this, they can just let me know and I can unmute them. But the question is, how long is an NHIS review good for, and how do you resubmit an application through the tool?
Yeah,
okay,
that's for Jim.
Give that one to Jim. Jim, you should be able to unmute now.
Yep, thank you. Yeah, so natural heritage review letters are good for 1 year from when they're issued. And that also is 1 year until the project impact starts. So it doesn't mean the project needs to be finished within 1 year, but whatever disturbance or again impacts it's going to have to start within that year. We constantly get new data, and so after a year, there's a chance we've had a new record come in that area or something. So they're only good for that 12 months. And then how to submit, there is a feature, a button if in MCE. I can't really show you because I have to log in and be a registered user, but there's a button on your project page that says clone project as draft. If you hit that, you will take whatever project you had It will put all the same details into a new MCE project, and then it's in draft status, so you can modify anything you want, including the project boundaries. So if anything changes, you can make those updates there.
Okay, thank you. Two more questions came in. The next one is, where can you find the DNR native plant community descriptions?
So there, if you do a conservation planning report, there's a link for each individual, which it doesn't give you all of them. But there is also I'm trying to find it now. Oh, you did? Oh, thank you. Yeah, so Lisa already put that in. I don't think I'm sharing here. So here is the native plant community class.
You're sharing your calendar.
Whoop, sorry. Yeah, just throw it over there. So this is where all the data for the NPCs can be found.
Okay, next question. Is the WACA RNC layer in MCE restricted to wetlands? And if so, is there an upland RNC layer?
Yeah, so this is Lisa. Hopefully you can hear me through Jim's microphone. So my understanding is that that WACA RNC layer is limited to wetlands. If I'm remembering how that was built. And there is not a separate upland RNC layer. Although RNCs can be upland, I don't think it's very common. Well, they're not common to begin with, right? It's rare, and it's even rarer for it to be an upland. But Jennie, please go ahead and correct me if I'm wrong.
I can unmute you, Jennie, if you'd like. There we go. No luck? Okay, let me try that one more time. No?
Well, I mean, I thought,
Oh, there it goes.
yeah, it seems like you should be able to unmute without making somebody a presenter. I
Yeah,
believe
I
that's,
might
you're
be the
right,
settings.
Lisa. I actually have the metadata pulled up, and I am not even seeing, I'm not seeing it on here, but I believe what we did was overlay those S ranks and the MVS layers with only the NWI, where those intersected. But some upland plant communities we could consider RNC. And also, like I said during my presentation, sometimes native plant communities are beyond the wetland boundary too. So it's our intention for that layer is, it really is to give a sense of what wetland types are potentially rare natural communities. So definitely we recognize that it's not at all a silver bullet. And we very, very rarely would designate a community that is an upland beyond, except for like those rock outcrops that have the little pools within them that house the ball cactus. But it would, case by case basis. But for the most part, a replacement plan is not going to impact, or, you know, it would be very hard for an LGU to say, yeah, this replacement plan is impacting this forested plant community that's rare. So we recognize that and understand that it wouldn't make a lot of sense for us to be designating these upland plant communities that aren't going to trigger any sort of that replacement plan part of the rule. Oh, yes. So Lisa wrote in the chat, what we did was overlay the wetland native plant communities. We took only those wetland native plant communities that had a status rank of S1 to S3 and that overlap a high or outstanding that have a high biodiversity significance. Yes. My apologies. I didn't recall what we did.
And this next question, I believe, will go back to Jim. Is there a way to export data via KMZ or shapefile from Minnesota Conservation Planner?
You can't export spatial data from MCE. There's a bunch of tabular data you can, and the text stuff like I showed. There's more tabular data that I didn't go into, but you can export that. All of the data, though, that I was showing earlier is in the Minnesota Geospatial Commons. So there's a link, if you remember when I was like calling up some of the metadata for each of those layers, there's a link for the layers. You can go find that actual downloadable data in the Geospatial Commons. Again, that does not include the rare species unless you have a license. And also that data delivery process is a little different. That's not available through just a standard website. So yeah, short answer, not through MCE, but you can get to all of it except for the non-public data.
Okay, one more question here. What is the current NHIS manual review timeline? And there's a second part to that. When reaching out via email to confirm required avoidance measures will be implemented, do we need to wait for any sort of response back for the NHIS review to be considered official or complete?
You know the current manual review timeline. You don't know where we're currently at for reviews?
I'm sorry, I
that,
misunderstood the question. I thought you meant a manual, like an instruction manual.
yeah,
So
I could understand that. Yeah, maybe a better way to phrase it is, what is the current NHIS review timeline?
Yes,
The
sorry. Yes,
intended
I
question.
am very
Yeah.
familiar with that. I look at that every day. We are right now, we are starting projects submitted about 12 weeks ago. Our goal is the 6-week range, 6 to 8 weeks. We're not hitting that now, of course, but yeah, right now we're at 12 weeks. And we are making progress. That used to be higher, believe it or not. So we're making progress lately, but yeah, it's about 3 months right now, maybe a little bit less. And reaching out via email, Lisa, correct me if I say something wrong, but you do not need to wait for us for a standard. Like if we say there's avoidance measures that you need to take and you say, send us an email saying we will follow those avoidance measures, you don't need to hear back from us. We'll just put that document in the MCE project so you can see it as well, that you know there's proof that you've agreed to follow those measures and you're good to go then.
And just so everyone knows, our goal for the review turnaround is, you know, Jim said 6 to 8, but it's a moving target. I would say that my goal really is more like 4 to 6. We used to be at 4, and every now and then we get caught up. And unfortunately, we are finding it a little bit tough to maintain it. But our goal is to get up to that 4 to 6 and maintain it.
Okay. Well, I don't see any other questions in the chat here. So thank you Jim, Jenny, and Lisa for talking with us today. I know our membership comes across these considerations all the time, so we do appreciate you sharing your time and knowledge today. And thank you to everyone in the membership for joining us today as well. And that completes our presentation. Thank you.
All right. Thanks,
All right.
Kelsey.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Bye.
Bye.